Listen, and let your heart become a drum for this part of the story. For now we speak of the quiet roar, the strength of the bent back that decides, at last, to straighten. When the powerful overreach, they plant the seeds of their own undoing in the hard soil of the people's will. This is the telling of the refusal, the turning away, the moment a community finds its voice not in a shout, but in a silence more deafening than any thunder. Gather close as we watch the valley learn to walk a new path. The standoff at the sud stretched, thick and heavy as honey. Guard Kwame's hand hovered over the jar Kojo-Ade held. His eyes, darting from the air-turned potter's steady gaze to the worn faces of his own people, saw not defiance, but a profound dignity. Here was no mob, but a community guarding its lifeblood. An ancestor's warning seemed to whisper in the dusty air. The tree that shelters you today may be the wood for your fire tomorrow. Do not be swift to burn your shelter. With a grunt that was more shame than anger, Kwame lowered his arm. The sun is too hot for this foolishness, he muttered to his men, and without another word, they turned and marched away, their mission crumbling in the face of silent, collective resolve. The release of tension was a visible wave. A woman wept softly. A man knelt and touched the earth in gratitude. Kojo-Ade placed the unbroken jar carefully by the seep, a testament and an offering. In that moment, the people understood their power. The house's authority was not a force of nature. It was a spell that required their belief, their participation. By simply refusing to be afraid, by standing together as guardians rather than rebels, they had broken the spell. It was a lesson in collective courage, a courage that needed no weapons, only shared conviction. The retreat of the guards was a victory, but it was a spark, not a solution. The house would retaliate. That evening, under the spreading arms of the great baobab, a council of a different sort was held. It was not of elders with titles, but of heads of families from the huts. The senior fisherwoman, the head farmer, the lead weaver, Seema the potter, and yes, Kojo-Ade. Old Neka the seeress was brought to sit at the base of the tree, her blind eyes seeing more than most. The python has struck and missed, she intoned. Now it will coil tighter. We cannot meet Fong with Fong. We must become like the river sand, shifting, giving way, but in our numbers, grinding the Fong to bluntness. The idea began as a murmur, then grew into a plan. It was the fishwife who gave it its name. My grandmother survived a tyrant chief, she said, her voice rough. She said the women simply stopped. They stopped singing for his festivals. They stopped selling him the best fish. They stopped mending his nets. They called it the turning of the back. He grew rich, but he grew lonely, and his power became hollow. A boycott. They would not attack the house. They would peacefully and completely withdraw their labor, their goods, their very presence from its economy. They would make its wealth meaningless. Implementing the boycott required the delicate, powerful virtue of unity. Messengers were sent to every hut, every fishing canoe, every hidden garden plot. The instructions were simple. From the next market day, no one was to sell any produce, craft, or service directly to the house or its agents. No one was to buy from the house's monopolized stalls, salt, iron tools, certain spices. No one was to provide labor for its repairs or fields. It was a staggering risk. The house controlled essentials. But the alternative, the water tax, the crushing rents, was death by degrees. The people chose a different risk. To bind the pact, a simple but profound ritual was performed at the baobab. Each family brought a handful of grain from their nearly empty stores. The grains were mixed in a large clay basin, Lela's finest work. As these seeds are now one, intoned the oldest farmer, so are our fates. He who breaks this mix to take a single seed for himself alone, let his harvest be dust, and his name be forgotten. It was an oath of solidarity, sworn not on gold or scripture, but on the very substance of their survival. The mixed grain would be planted in the communal plot, a symbol of their intertwined future. Market day arrived. The square was unervingly quiet. The house's stalls, usually bustling, stood laden with unsold goods. Their stewards called out, but their voices echoed in a new void. The fishwives laid out their catch, But when a house cook approached, they shook their heads. "Sorry, Andy. All sold," they would say, though the plumpest fish remained. The weavers claimed their best cloth was promised. The porters suddenly found their backs too weak to carry the house's goods. It was a masterclass in passive resistance, a cultural tradition of polite but absolute noncompliance that was deeply disorienting to the rulers. From the veranda, Kofi and his council watched, first with confusion, then with dawning, cold fury. They saw their control slipping away not through battle, but through absence. The marketplace, the vibrant heart they had parasitized, was beating in a new rhythm that excluded them. Auntie Yak clutched her beads. "They are biting the hand that feeds them," she hissed. Kofi's face was stone. "Then we will show them what happens when the hand becomes a fist." But the fist had nothing to strike. How do you punish a shadow? How do you jail a silence? The boycott was a mirror, showing the house its own irrelevance. Inside the house of many windows, the effects began as inconveniences and quickly deepened into crises. With no one to draw water from the distant springs, the great cisterns ran low. The gardens, untended by the village gardeners, began to wilt. Laundry piled up. Meals grew monotonous as the supply of fresh vegetables and fish dried up. The servants who remained, mostly older and loyal from decades of service, were overworked and fearful. The vibrant life of the house, the laughter, the music, the constant flow of people, stilled into an eerie, hollow grandeur. The house was becoming a beautiful, empty shell. Kojo-Ade, hearing whispers of this from the few contacts still within the compound, felt a complex pang. This was his childhood home, its silence a ghost of its former self. But he also understood the necessity. When the music changes, so does the dance, his mother had once said in a rare moment of bitterness. The house had changed the music to a dirge of extraction. The people were simply refusing to dance to it. His sacrifice was no longer just personal. It was woven into the larger fabric of the valley's struggle for dignity. His new loyalty was to the dance of justice, not to the house of the old tune. The house's response was predictable: escalation. They sent criers through the huts announcing severe penalties for anyone participating in the illegal refusal to trade. They threatened to seize land leases, to expel families. But the threats rang hollow. The people had already lost so much. The threat of losing the little that remained had lost its terror. Instead, it fortified their resolve. A new, grim saying began to circulate: "You cannot threaten a man who is already standing at the cliff's edge." He may just decide to fly. The community had leapt, and in the leaping, found a surprising collective wingspan. To sustain themselves, the hut dwellers perfected the art of the hidden economy. Barter flourished in backyards and forest clearings. The communal plot's yield was meticulously shared. Knowledge exchanged hands: how to find wild tubers, how to make soap from ashes, how to repair tools without new iron. Lela and the other potters worked tirelessly, creating the vessels needed for storage and trade. This underground network was a testament to ingenuity and mutual aid. They were not just boycotting the house. They were building a parallel, self-sufficient world right under its nose, proving they did not need its benevolence to survive. Then, fate interceded with the impartial, fierce hand. A fever, born of the stagnant water and the uncollected waste in the neglected corners of the wealthy compound, slipped into the house of many windows. It began with a kitchen maid, then jumped to a guard, then to Kofi's own young nephew. It was a relentless sickness: burning skin, racking coughs, deep weakness. The house's own herbalist was overwhelmed. Panic, a more virulent contagion, took hold. The very isolation the boycott had created now became a death trap. They could not buy medicines from the outside, for no healer would come. Their own healer had fled to her family in the huts. From their garden plot, Kojo-Ade and Lela saw the frantic comings and goings, heard the muffled cries of fear. Lela's hand went to her mother's medicine pouch, always at her waist. Sima had taught her the uses of neem, fever grass, and the bitter dogaro leaf. She looked at Kojo-Ade, conflict in her eyes. The virtue of compassion warred with the memory of the Water Guards Club, the tax collector's sneer. "They are dying," she said simply. Kojo-Ade gazed at the silent, suffering house. "A house on fire threatens the whole valley," he replied, an old proverb taking on new, literal meaning. Do we let it burn because we dislike the owner? The decision was not Kojo-Ade's or Lela's alone. They brought it to the Baobab Council. The debate was fierce. "Let their pride be their medicine," one man shouted. "They took our water. Let them drink their own poison." But old Neka, her blind eyes seeming to see the future, calmed the storm. "Listen," she rasped. "We are not becoming them. Our strength is not in vengeance, but in our humanity. If we let children die behind those walls to prove a point, what is the point we prove? That we, too, can be cruel? The true size of a man is measured by the size of the thing that makes him angry. Let us be angry at injustice, not at the suffering of the ignorant." Her wisdom tipped the scale. They would offer aid, but on their own terms. It would not be secret or pleading. It would be a public, dignified act of moral superiority. A delegation led by Lela for her knowledge and Kojo-Ade as the symbolic bridge would go to the house's gate. They would not enter as servants or supplicants, but as neighbors answering a neighbor's desperate cry. It was a breathtaking gamble, an offer of healing that could be rejected or could break the siege forever. At the great carved gate of the house, now barred shut from the inside, Kojo-Ade called out, not with the voice of an heir, but with the clear tone of a community elder. "Kofi of the many windows, the valley sees your sickness. We have healers and hands. We offer them." Silence from within. Then, from a high window, Auntie Ya's face appeared, pale and drawn. "Is this a trick? Do you come to gloat?" Lela stepped forward, holding up a bundle of fragrant herbs. "We come with fever grass and dogaro," she called, her voice carrying in the still air. "We come to grind them and make broth. We come to sweep the sickness from your corners. We come not for your coin, but for our own soul's peace." It was an offer impossible to refuse. The gate creaked open, just wide enough. The sight that greeted them was one of profound disarray. Beautiful objects lying in dust, fine linen soiled, and everywhere, the sound of miserable coughing. The mighty house was brought low not by spears, but by microbes and its own isolation. Lela immediately took charge, directing the few able-bodied servants to boil water, open windows, and bring her to the sick. She moved with a quiet, potent competence that ignored the opulence around her, focusing only on the human need. Kojo-Ade went to the room where his father lay. Kofi was burning with fever, his regal demeanor reduced to a shivering, vulnerable old man. For a moment, their eyes met, the father who had disowned the son who had returned as a stranger bearing medicine. No words passed. Kojo-Ade simply dipped a cloth in the cool urban-fused water Lela had prepared and placed it on his father's forehead. It was an act of simple, devastating mercy. He tended to him not as a dutiful heir, but as one human being caring for another. The rigid lines of authority, of betrayal and punishment, dissolved in the face of this basic kindness. As he worked, moving through the rooms of his childhood, he saw the fear in the eyes of his relatives. They saw not a traitor, but a potential savior. His cousin, the one betrothed to Adana, clutched his hand. "Do not let me die, Kojo," she whispered, her pride gone. In that moment, he understood the hollowness of the power he'd left behind. It was a palace built on sand, collapsing at the first true crisis. The humility he had learned in the pottery shed was now the strongest force in the room. He had nothing to prove to them, and everything to give. For 3 days and nights, Lela, Kojo-Ade, and a rotating group of village women tended the house. They cleaned, they cooked simple, nourishing food, they administered remedies. They spoke softly, not of the boycott or the taxes, but of comfort. They sang the old, gentle lullabies that every child in the valley knew, regardless of their roof. The music absent for so long returned to the halls, not the music of celebration, but the music of care, weaving a fragile bridge between terrace and hut. The very walls seemed to sigh in relief. During the quiet hours, Lela sat with the convalescing children, telling them stories of Anansi the spider, stories of cunning and resilience. She showed them how to shape little animals from beeswax. She treated them not as privileged offspring, but simply as children. They, in turn, adored her, their trust a stark contrast to their parents' former disdain. She was dismantling prejudice not with arguments, but with kindness and nurturing attention. In her presence, the idea of servant and master became absurd. There were only the sick and the well, the carer and the cared for. As the fever broke and strength slowly returned, a new and uncomfortable consciousness dawned within the house. The elders, wrapped in blankets and sipping the broth made by potter's hands, were forced to contemplate their salvation. They had been saved by the knowledge they had scorned, by the hands they had taxed, by the community they had tried to break. Auntie Ya, watching Lela gently braid her niece's hair, found her certainties crumbling. The proverb, "Do not look down on the crocodile, because it is small in the water," took on a terrifying new meaning. The small, quiet people from below had proven to be the deeper, stronger current. Kofi, weak but clear-eyed, asked to see Kojo-Ade alone. The meeting was in the same council chamber where he had once dismissed him. Now Kofi sat not behind the desk, but by the window, looking out at the valley. "You came back," he said, his voice rough. "Why?" Kojo-Ade stood, not kneeling, but with respect. "Because a house is not its walls or its ledgers, father. It is the people who sustain it. You taught me to protect the house. I am protecting it from its own worst self, from the pride that would let it rot from within while it shone outside." He spoke not as a challenger, but as a steward of a deeper, older truth. The crisis forced a painful introspection upon the house's leadership. They called a private council, attended only by the recovered elders. The usual boasts and strategies were absent. The air was thick with shame and a dawning realization. One of the older uncles, who had lost a granddaughter to the fever and seen her saved by Lela's herbs, broke the silence. "We have been fools," he whispered. "We believed our wealth made us strong, but it made us blind. The true strength of this valley was outside our gates, and we tried to choke it." It was an admission that cost him great pride, but the fever had burned away the non-essential. Kofi finally spoke, his voice heavy with the weight of his own fallibility. "My son chose the root over the roof. We called him a fool. But when the storm came, the roof leaked, and the root held firm." He was referencing the ancient parable of the baobab and the silk cotton tree. The silk cotton tree grows tall and fast, but is hollow and breaks in a storm. The baobab grows slow, seems twisted, but its strength is inward, and it withstands all winds. They had been silk cotton trees. Kojo-Ade, Lela, the people, they were the baobab. The virtue of wisdom was arriving late, but it was arriving. The formal end of the boycott was not declared by the house, but by the natural resumption of life. As people regained their health, the first act of the house's staff was not to command, but to request. The head cook went to the market and, with humility, asked the fishwives for their best catch, offering a fair price in return. The weaver was approached for new cloth for the children's garments. The transactions were quiet, normal, but everyone felt the seismic shift beneath them. The ledger of power had been rewritten. The currency was now respect, not fear. Kojo-Ade and Lela returned to their hut, exhausted but at peace. Their return was a triumphal procession of a new kind. People did not cheer, they nodded, they touched their shoulders, they offered bowls of stew. They had not won a war, they had enacted a healing. That night, as they sat by their own fire, Lela looked at Kojo-Ade's hands, now calloused, stained with clay and herbs. "You are not the man who came down from the terrace," she said. He took her hand, equally strong and marked. "Nor are you the girl who mended pots in the shadow of that terrace. We have both been fired in a different kiln." The final, symbolic act of the reversal was the remaking ceremony, suggested by Old Neka. It was held in the market square, under the baobab tree. Both the house elders and the hut council sat in a circle. At the center were the mixed grains from the oath of solidarity, now sprouting tender green shoots in their clay basin. Kofi, leaning on a simple stick, stood. His voice, once used to issuing decrees, now asked for a hearing. "We have been poor stewards," he began, the words clearly costly. "We confused our station with our worth, and we forgot that a chief is only a chief because of his people." He then did something unheard of. He took off his beaded necklace of office, not to give it away, but to lay it beside the sprouting grains. "From today, let our authority be measured by this green life, not by this cold bead. Let our contracts be discussed here, in this circle, where the sun sees all." It was a surrender of absolute power and an embrace of shared governance. The boycott had shown the power of the people's no. This ceremony was about building a new yes, together. The fever had broken more than bodies. It had broken the old, sick way of being. The drumbeat changes now, children. It is no longer a tense warning or a quiet rhythm of resistance. It becomes a slower, purposeful beat, the sound of building, of planting anew after a long drought. The fever is past, but the healing has just begun. Can a house remade from its own shattered pieces ever stand true? The final shaping awaits.